Okay, close that. Good evening, Nikki, and everybody watching the recording and everybody who pops on later. Our topic tonight is homeschooling with babies and toddlers and preschoolers underfoot, because that's probably one of the hardest things about homeschooling, because you're generally homeschooling K through 12, but you generally have younger kids. So we'll brainstorm some ideas and just talk about expectations and how we can be realistic and things like that. But first, let's pray for the graces of motherhood, because that's kind of the key. I love this prayer book because someone asked about it last time. This is my very falling apart mother's manual book by Father Francis Coombs. But I mean, it's like shredded to bits, kid torn apart. But I love it. It has so many great prayers. So, let us pray in the name of the Father and the Son and the Holy Spirit. Amen. Powerful is your intercession with God, Mary, for you are his mother. Tender too is your love for us, for you are our mother. Confidently then, I come to you as a child, poor and needy, to seek your aid and protection. In every trial of motherhood, I beg your aid. For the grace of a happy delivery, I come to you. For your holy assistance in guarding and directing each tiny soul with which God entrusts me, I call to you. In every sorrow that comes to me in my motherhood, I confide in you, that I may have strength to bear cheerfully all the pains and the hardships of motherhood. I lean on you, that the sweetness of motherhood may not through my neglect be embittered in later years by pains of regret. I trust in you, that the will of God may always be fulfilled in me through each act of my motherhood, little and great. I beg your aid. Never forsake me, dear mother, my hope, my consolation, my confidence, and my trust, but ever be at my side to aid and protect me, your needy child. Amen. In the name of the Father, and the Son, and the Holy Spirit. So, hi, Nikki. If you at any point need to pop off for kids or whatever, it's totally fine. Okay. I know that is part of where we are, and here comes Blair. So it is totally fine for muting, blocking video, whatever you need to do, because I know you're at home. Hey, Blair.
Hello.
Good to see you.
Let's see if I can.
Are we all set? Oh, so
No.
all the little people. All the little people. I think that there were some really good points made in the threads on the group today that I wanted to highlight at the beginning, and then just kind of brainstorm and talk about different ideas. Maybe we can expand upon some of those. Hi, sweetie. But one of the key things is that this is hard. Homeschooling with all the little people is hard. In fact, probably the actual homeschooling part is the easier, more enjoyable, fun part in general with most families. But it's all the other stuff, the keeping up with the house, the keeping up with the little people, and, you know, the stressors that come from outside of the house that seem to weigh on us most heavily. So it's hard. It's going to be hard. There's no magic solution, right? There's nothing that works for every family and every season. And so I think it's key to look at it as a season, even if it lasts a really long time, because that season will ebb and flow, and so will our peace and our confidence amidst those seasons. Another point that was made was that for different kids, different things are going to work. And for different moms, different things are going to work. So starting with, even just pregnancy, some moms can just plow through normal motherhood being pregnant and they're fine. And some moms have to be on the couch the whole time. And that presents challenges. Every newborn is different. Every toddler is different. Every preschooler is different. And so there is trial and error, just like with homeschooling, just like with mothering, just like with life, and trying to figure out what it is that will work. So saying that up front is important, and acknowledging that up front. I think that most of us in general have our expectations set too high for ourselves and for just what we can really accomplish in a day. Especially starting out, we have kind of rose-colored glasses, and maybe sometimes we are more realistic than other times. but it's good to give yourself grace and to realize, okay, this is something A, that I have to kind of relax about, and B, though, it is something that you can think about and do your best to try things that could work. So things that were suggested in the group this morning, and then I'll kind of ask what you guys have tried if you want to share. When you're pregnant, so I know that, you know, if you have easy pregnancies and it's all fine, then that's not an issue. But most of us at some point in pregnancy have issues, whether it's morning sickness, all day sickness, all 9 months sickness, or it's just fatigue, you know, or maybe you're, you know, it's things that like your back and your body and the physical ailments that you experience. So when you're pregnant and you need to rest, it's hard to manage little people and school if you have kind of the spectrum. I know Blair mentioned that her big kids know, or her school age kids know, what things they can bring to her on the bed to do school when she's in bed and having to rest. And they just do school on her bed. We did a lot of that. I remember couch schooling when I had my difficult pregnancies. And I had the bucket of books next to the couch, and whatever we could get done, we'd get done. And the only time, you know, I made sure that I was only getting up for their physical needs, but not just the schooly and the things that, you know, could be done from laying. So part of that is planning for that reality. So if you know you're going to be pregnant and there's a possibility there's going to be issues, or you have just found out you're pregnant and you know it's during the school year, part of that is planning. And a couple people mentioned some great ideas. Schedule your school year accordingly. You don't have to follow August, September to May. You know, start school early, start school late, skip the whole month of, you know, while you're the sickest. It's fine. Your kids will be fine. And if you are in a state where there's minimum days, or there's certain days you have to do school, then figure out what you can schedule that's the minimum for you. I know we've talked before in some of these about a minimum viable day. What is it that you feel is the minimum thing you have to accomplish to say you did school, and check that box? For a lot of moms, it's the 4 R's: reading, writing, math, arithmetic, and religion. If those 4 things are done, we've had a school day. It can even be less than that. That's not, you know, that doesn't have to be your minimum day. But I think that's helpful to think about the scheduling, to think about the planning and what it is that's realistic. I know when I've been in difficult seasons, my bigger kids are doing more workbooks than they otherwise would. I just don't have the wherewithal to instruct them, but they still can progress in their skills, or at least maintain their skills through that kind of practice. Someone suggested that they did a 4-day week during those difficult seasons so that they had a day to catch up. And they always used it, probably, but it gave them that freedom to say, okay, we just can't get to this today. We'll be able to do it on Friday. Someone suggested, simplifying, lowering expectations, but to also enjoy the pregnancy and find ways to celebrate it and make it a special thing. I know we always told our kids, you know, mom has to rest because she's growing the baby. And the way you frame things, you know, can you go get me a diaper? Because that will help mommy take care of the baby. Really does make a difference in their attitude and our attitude. And I did that a lot with, you know, even little toddlers can go fetch a diaper out of a basket or whatever it is. So pregnancy is tricky. I think too, we have to consider what's worst case. You know, what is the situation where if we have really, really difficult pregnancies or births and we're hospitalized and our husband is home, and is there something he could do, or somebody else could do, grandma, even if it's just reading stories every day? Do we have stories in the house? You know, are there books that someone could pick up and say, okay, I'm going to read this to the kids so they have some learning. But it's also okay to take a break. I had a really good friend who had a tragic loss and essentially took an entire year where they barely did any school because she was depressed and she was struggling, and the other kids were struggling as well. And she had physical issues as a result of that. And they did a little math here and a little reading here and, you know, this and that. And she was concerned that at the end that it was going to be a problem. And she, at the end of the year, tested them because she had to. When they had done very little school, she thought it was going to be disastrous. But in the end, those tests came out pretty average. They weren't exceptional, but they hadn't like fallen behind a whole grade level or anything like that. And there were some gaps that it identified that she knew the following year she would do better with. So I think part of that is you do have to realize that homeschooling isn't about school at home. It's about living a life of learning together. And if that means that babies take priority, then babies take priority. I know someone posted a fabulous article called "The Baby is the Lesson." And I've heard that a lot from seasoned homeschool moms, that, you know, how we treat pregnancy and birth and babies teaches our kids how to treat babies, how to, you know, look at pregnancies for when they're adults, for when they're having their own children, or very pro-life, to modify your life around a little weak one who can't do, you know, anything for itself. So pregnancy stuff. And then, which carries over into newborn. I think you could say almost all the same things for newborn stage. Simplify, see if there's stuff that dad can do, plan your time accordingly, take time off. If your kids go crazy when you take too much time off, plan something simple that they can do each day that's something, even if it's, you know, a video or something that's educational. What else would you say? Oh, and just carry the baby and wear the baby and keep the baby with you, because that's really the way that, you know, the baby is going to be the happiest when you're physically able to, you know, get up and do things again. So there's not a lot of difference in my mind between the newborn and pregnancy stage, because baby, you know, I remember so often nursing and reading. I'd have a book and I'd be reading aloud while I'm nursing, and that baby got used to the stories when they were pregnant anyway. So it wasn't anything new. So I think that stage is difficult in a mom has to rest, or mom has to sit, or mom can't get up and do a lot. But then moving into toddlers and preschools gets more challenging. So before I go there, did you guys have anything to add about pregnancy, having a newborn, what's been challenging, what's worked? Nikki, you were just there. Did you guys jump back into school right away?
Absolutely not.
Awesome.
I did plan. We actually took off the entire month of February. And so we'll go into probably June. Before we're actually, you know, done with this school year. But I knew that right after having her, we wouldn't, there was no way. So.
Yeah. That's great. And I know Blair mentioned that she's enrolled, and so she has a consultant with Mother Divine Grace that helped her realize what things throughout the different seasons she could, you know, dial back, and even saying that you don't have to get through the entire school year. There's a, you know, at some seasons of life, there's a point where you just say, we're done. We're stopping at this point because we've gotten far enough. So those are all good things to consider. So, but I think what's harder is the toddlers and preschoolers, because they are all busy and moving now and loud, and they need attention. Like, you can't just sit and snuggle them or plop them somewhere in a swing or whatever. They are constantly on the move. And again, there were fantastic suggestions today in the group, just to summarize some of those, but I'm going to go back to them too. Mom said, lower your expectations and ignore the messes, and baby proof everything in that area so that you can let them just kind of go wild, if that's the right term. Lots of moms will, again, take the opportunity to plan ahead and prepare boxes of educational toys, sensory bins, special school supplies, or busy bags that are just for during school time, that those toddlers and preschools don't get to use at any other time, so that they're more engaging. And when I had a busy toddler, one thing that did work well for us is I had a bin for each day of the week, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, just toys or manipulatives or things that they could do. And then the Monday bin would get pulled down out of the closet on Mondays, and they would be entertained by that. And that way it was kind of newish every day. And it wasn't like, oh, I played with that yesterday, so I'm bored already. People mentioned Play-Doh and sensory things, we said. I think what wasn't mentioned is take school outside if the weather's nice enough. You know, if you have a safe area for toddlers and preschoolers to just run around in some grass near you, and you can sit and read to an older kid. High chairs and containment are a thing, and we gotta do it. There's nothing wrong with plopping a toddler in a play yard or getting those, gate fences, putting them in the high chair with some Cheerios and keeping them entertained that way, because that's just teaching them that they're not the center of the universe and don't get to do everything they want to do, right? During nap time is an option. Some families really, really like schooling during nap time, and some families need that time. Moms need that time to rest, so that doesn't work for them. So again, you have to kind of figure out what will work for mom, what will work for the kids. If nap time is an option for schooling, great. If it's not, then try something else. One mom I know gets up super early. Her kids are up early anyway, and so they start school like first thing in the morning, and dad doesn't leave for work till like 8:30, and so like between 6 and 8 they get a ton of schoolwork done because he's got the baby. Another mom I know doesn't get the baby out of the crib for like over an hour in the morning and lets the baby stay and gets as much school done as they can. So I mean, there's things to do, and think it through and try what works for you. Older kid health is real. So when your kids get to be an age where they can kind of play with the baby, it's an assignment on their list that they get 15-20 minutes of play with the baby time, the toddler, the preschooler, whatever. I find that worked best when I gave them a task to do together. So I might have said like, here's a puzzle to do together, or here's a sensory bin to play together, rather than just letting that older kid, figure it out. And so that worked when the older kid was a little younger, to get them able to do that better. And now that they're older, as they got older, I didn't have to worry so much about planning that time. And don't feel bad about enlisting your older kids to do that and taking turns and swapping, because that teaches them that the younger people are important. The thing about homeschooling is that we're multi-generational, we're different levels. We're not peers focused. And so for an older kid to know how to take care of a baby, a toddler, or preschooler, to know how to interact with a kid who's 3 or 4 or 5 years younger than them, is a really valuable life skill. So there's no, don't feel any guilt about doing that. You're not taking away from their education. Now you may be, especially if you have tweens or teens, they may tell you that they have too much work to do and they don't have time to play with the baby. But I think it's a good life lesson to say, but you're going to make the time because the baby's important. What else was mentioned? Let's see. A Mother's Day Out program, or having even a mother's helper come into the house, or having a relative take a toddler or preschooler for 1 or 2 mornings a week. I've known people who have done that with great success. It really is, it's fine in those seasons to get creative, and you're not pushing that kid away, or you're not worrying, you're not saying that kid is less important. You're just getting done the things that need done in that regard. So those are all good options. And we got to use screens sometimes. Some families, that's the solution for sometimes. Some families, it's not a good solution because it makes everybody crazy. But you got to figure out, what works for your family in that situation. So basically, it was the toddler and preschool comments that I saw were mostly about like expectation management. They're going to make messes. They're going to be noisy. You're going to get interrupted a lot. Providing things that they do only during school time that are special, and keep them novel and keep them fresh and new. Scheduling creatively, whether that's nap time or early in the morning or evening. Another friend whose math, they could never focus enough, so they did math at night when everybody went to bed for the older kid. Lots of creativity. Containment for toddlers and preschools is a real thing. We talked about that, and we talked about just the options of like a Mother's Day Out, or getting some help, using screens when you need to. The most important thing, I think, for all the stages, though, is that we remember to enjoy them. If we are going to be constantly frustrated by the kids all over and interrupting the school lesson. But the way we respond to that is a lesson. Just like the baby is the lesson, and when the baby needs the needs. Toddlers and preschoolers are the same way. How we respond to their needs is teaching all the other kids a lesson about how we respond to other people. Not easy, never going to be perfect, but definitely important that we teach the big kids that, that's important to do. So what have you guys done with toddlers and preschoolers that has worked at all? I know Blair stepped out, but Nikki, did you have any ideas?
Yeah. So for us, one thing that really works is the containment idea. I found that they like to be involved in school with us. So if they can color or do something in a high chair or sitting at the table, and they get to do school with the big kids, that's huge. They feel involved, and that makes them happy. Nap time is another big one for us, unless I am pregnant, and in which case nap time is important for rest. And so that's when it doesn't work. But nap time is another time that we do utilize as well.
Yeah, that's an excellent point. Yeah, I mean, different seasons, right? Hey, Valerie. Hey, Beth. I'm glad you guys joined us. If you have thoughts that you want to pop in at any time, you're welcome to. We were just talking kind of about what's worked for us in different seasons. I have several funny memories of me sitting in one spot and having like a baby or newborn in my lap or whatever, and having one kid on one side of me doing one school subject and one kid on one side of me doing a completely different school subject, and me doing this. Because it was like, we only have this time. Let's do this. And it took my mental, my very lack of mental when I had a newborn, but trying really hard to keep those two kids, going through that, because it can be tricky. Valerie, have you experienced just that kind of pull in different directions yet?
Well, my little one is, she's hard to keep for long.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm not really quite sure how much she's getting out of it, there you go. I wanted to read Little Women to them, and so I started that, and that works because Gabe was doing American history last year, and it takes the Civil War. They ended with the Civil War when they dropped out of school. So I was like, well, so I should read this now because it actually fits in with what you were studying, and this is part of why I'm loving the idea of homeschooling, because I can tie all these, his literature with the history, with the anyway. So I'm kind of excited about that, and I've always, that was my favorite book. My mom read it to me when I was about 5 years old, and I don't read enough to my little one because I read tons, but we read little baby books, and so I have not been reading out loud big books to her. And so I was like, we should do this, because by 5 I was doing this with my big one, even though she's delayed. And so I started reading that out loud, and my big one's like, I don't want to read no silly book about girls. So he's always refused to read it on his own. So I was trying to do that. And he's actually listening, but I don't think that the little one is listening at all. And I don't know what to do about, she's 5, but she's definitely not listening at all. And so I can see, like, as we're going through this, if I'm doing history and we're doing read alouds for history, and she's supposed to be getting something out of it, I'm just not sure that she's going to get anything at all.
Well, that's a really big span too. That's like a huge span to try to include both. I mean, even if they don't get anything out of it, they're hearing the language, they're hearing you reading, they're seeing the importance of that, even if they don't understand. But and also that's sometimes choosing, because you always choose for the older kid.
Right.
And you hope that the younger ones kind of
get something.
But sometimes, different books aren't going to bring that out. But sometimes they will. I bet you'll find different titles will and different titles won't, attract her attention. But that's a challenging thing to be pulled in.
And you were talking about putting on the videos for the history, or not videos, audios. I think that there's, are there audios for one of these history programs that you guys were mentioning, and that people really loved those, and yada, yada. And I'm a little teapot, and going on a bear hunt, and like that's the level of her understanding.
Yeah,
and so
she's not there yet.
Sure. Anyway.
No, I think it's an important point. Nikki, what were you going to add?
I would say perhaps the lesson isn't necessarily history or whatever else it is that you're reading about. It's how do we sit and listen to mom when the time comes that I actually need to be paying attention to this stuff. She's going to see older siblings sitting there listening to mom. This is how we participate. This is how we listen. That's the lesson for her.
Okay.
That's an excellent point. That's true. That's definitely true, because it is. It's about it's setting the stage. It's setting habits, is what Charlotte Mason would say, and laying down habits so that when they get to the point where they can comprehend that they've already have those, those building blocks. It's a really good point. Beth, did you want to say anything?
Can you hear me?
I can.
Oh, now you, okay. You know what? I have a sleeping baby right next to me, and
Okay.
but
That's
it's
all
okay.
good.
But anyway, I have like no brain power, and I'm so tired. Is it, you guys are Central Time, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. So it's like 10 o'clock and my brain just goes off.
Turned
But
off.
I really like what you just said. The last comment that was made about learning, maybe that's what it is. Maybe that's what the lesson is, just learning how to sit there and give that intention, develop that virtue of patience and all of. So I think there's a lot of wisdom. I'm going to be meditating on that.
I think that happens a lot. That is very, very wise. It's those early years when they're not doing formal school, maybe, or even if you have them doing something, they observe and they watch and they know what's happening around them. And so they do pick up those skills, and it makes it easier later to teach them when they get to the level that they can, because even, watching my kids move into high school and the skills they're demonstrating, and I see, my next youngest kid who's only 4th grade, like watching that and seeing how he wants to be a little bit more independent and do things a little bit more like brother and sister, because he's watching what they do. And so the same thing happens no matter what age they are. It's that first kid, you gotta make sure, they're the guinea pig. So we always mess up with them.
Mm-hmm.
but that they're still, the younger ones are learning other things. And that's why family learning can be so cool.
Mm-hmm.
I like that. Have you guys, when you've been pregnant or had a newborn or had a toddler or had a preschooler and we're trying to manage things, have there been things that worked or maybe didn't work that we haven't talked about? I know you guys popped on late, but that come to mind. Or what do you think is the most challenging thing in a day? Like you're there, you're trying to do school with somebody and something's happening. What is coming to mind that's the challenge?
Well, if I'm trying to work with the older one and the little one is loose, we're into everything, and Mama's house is going to be a disaster zone by the time Mama's done. I would say that's the, she goes from one room to the next and just destroys everything.
Right? No, that's real.
She gets everything out, and then I spend my whole rest of the day picking everything up.
That's real. Yeah. So that might be, you might decide that her lesson for, several months is to learn to stay in a certain area and be rewarded for that and stay where you can see her or can,
she has one set of toys she can get out, but not
all of them. Right. Yes. Well, but I think a location is key on that too. Like if you have a room that you can close off, or at least you can have some kind of temporary, like this is the line when it's school time, we have to stay in this area. It takes teaching, and I'm sure that she would have to learn that. But we were really blessed in our last house. We had a schoolroom with a door, and it was a big, huge game room, but it had a door. So when I had my little guy, we would just close the door, and he knew how to open it, but we don't open that door during school. No, only mom opens it. And so we were able to teach him to stay in that room, and we kept it really safe. Like he could get out everything there. Oh, and those bookshelves. I don't know what it is about kids loved like pulling every book off the shelf.
Oh my God, every book.
So we would let them do that. And then all of us, when school was over, would clean that up, because letting them do that let us get some stuff done. So all the kids would help clean it up and mom, but it was a team.
It's a lesson learning how
It's a good idea that I need, because I don't mind her getting out the books, but I need to, it's the books in the den and her bedroom, and like it's
Oh.
and so it's a good idea that I need to train her that when we're doing school that she has to stay in one room.
I think I would do that. Yeah, either one room or two rooms, just limit it so that it's like these are the school times, so that it's not as, and something that can attract her to the place where you are, something that she does love to, you know, maybe it's make a mess of or whatever. Because we mentioned in the beginning, kind of doing that. Lots of people had lots of ideas in the thread today of different activities, toys, things you can make sure are school time things to keep them occupied. Someone mentioned busy bags, which I've made before with a group. Just little activities that they can do independently is mostly the key here while you're working with the other kids. What one friend said, they I remember this, who was that? She had a kiddie pool, right? In the house, and she would set it in the kitchen, like they did school like in the dining room. She set the kiddie pool in the kitchen, and she'd put rice in there, or, the next week it would be, I don't know, something else that was just messy, but it was okay for the kid to keep in that space.
Yeah.
And so I remember her saying that was just what she had to do. She chose that. So who is it? Sarah McKenzie says she gave popsicles to her twins to get school done. She had twins, and when they were toddlers, she couldn't do anything, so she'd plop them in the high chair and give them each a popsicle almost every day at like 10 a.m. And it took them a good almost an hour to eat that popsicle. Oh, Beth is gonna pop off. I know, sweetie. Get your rest with that baby and snuggle. I'm glad you popped on, though. Hopefully we'll see you again.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Sure, yeah.
Okay. Have a good night.
You too, Beth. Thanks.
Bye-bye.
So
I've also heard of people doing dollar tablecloths, and the mess stays on the dollar tablecloth. You just throw it in the trash afterwards. So,
yeah. I mean, I'm not saying do that every day, but once a week or once every other week or something. I mean, because then you're constantly. But it's a lot about, as you said, Nikki, it's a lot about teaching them the skills of school. Especially if they've never been. Most of our toddlers and preschoolers have never been to a school environment, a classroom environment. So they don't have that preconceived understanding that everybody listens to the teacher and everybody stays in the same room but that's something we often have to teach our kids as lifelong homeschoolers to pay attention to. So yeah, I mean, there's lowering expectations, but there's things we can try and things we can do to try to help those kids feel involved and positive. And that's what I go back to, is that I think we need to focus that it's not a punishment that they're interrupting school. We don't punish them necessarily for interrupting school unless we've already worked with them and taught them and give them the practice that they need. Because yes, we need obedience, but they don't know how to behave in this environment, especially those of you new to homeschooling. They're not used to having mom need to teach a sibling right there. It doesn't make sense to them. So I think we focus on reacting with love and redirecting with love as best as we can, and helping them find something constructive to do. I mean, every toddler, redirection is the magic tool, because they can be throwing a fit about something. And usually if you point out a puppy, they're like, oh, they're fine. But that's something to keep in mind. So, and I would add to that, don't knock yourself out and die trying to come up with all these creative, cute things for them to do either. Pinterest could be a nightmare of tens of thousands of ideas that you can do with toddlers and preschoolers. If you Google, what do I do with toddlers and preschoolers while I'm homeschooling? That could be completely overwhelming. If you are that kind of mom, go knock yourself out. There's benefit in spending some time over the summer or whatever preparing something for those kids, just like you're preparing lessons for everybody else. But if it stresses you out and you're not that mom, then come up with a different solution. I'm not a crafty mom. Like I said, we did a busy bag swap with other moms. So we each came up with a little bag of things, and we came up with 10 of those, and then we traded so that everybody had 10 bags at the end. I can't do all that by myself, but I can work together?
Because I'm discovering, because we're doing some of this, homeschooling for the end of the year here, and that's something that worked with her great one day for doing her little math facts here for her 10 minutes of math facts. If I do it, another day, it's like, dude, I've already done that. I'm not doing that again. So you have to have something new every stinking day. So doing the swap would be awesome.
Yeah. Yeah. All right. Mentioned in the beginning, we had like bins of things Monday through Friday, like a Monday bin. So it wasn't like I had to have, dozens of different things. It was every Monday was something new so that every day it was fresh. But yeah, at one point I remember too, I had note cards and I put a picture on note card of something they could do that would be entertaining. And I had them in like a page protector thing so that each, like they were all in a row or whatever. I don't know how I did that. I guess I taped them down probably because I'm not creative, crafty, whatever. And then I would just, it's time for you to pick something to do while I work with your brother. Which of these things do you want to do? And so they had a visual of, it was like Play-Doh and puzzles and water and just things that they could do. And they got some choice in the matter. You know how choice always makes kids feel so much better. But again, that worked for like one kid. I don't think it worked for the next one. If I remember, it was more of just books everywhere. And that one's loud. That child likes to be loud. So it was more of teaching them to let us hear ourselves think. But yeah, different days, different seasons. It's hard. It's hard. But I think not that it can't be done. And I think the key is, I keep saying the key, in the end, it's worth it. Really, really is worth it when you realize that these are the hard parts that I have to get through in order to homeschool. And the blessings of homeschooling are tremendous, and that you see the results and you see the relationships you're building with your kids and they're building with each other. Usually, for most families, it makes it completely worth all of the struggles and the stress if you look at it from that perspective. There's some seasons when it doesn't seem as worth it as others, but in the long run, those of us who've been there forever will tell you that it is worth it in the end. Yesterday, Mother's Day, we didn't get to go out and go see my family or spend time with my mom, but my brother and I went to my parents' house and sat on the porch and chatted with my mom and dad because we didn't want to go in the house. Anyway, we left the kids at home. So we had a lovely visit. But I got a text somewhere in the middle of it from my husband that my 4 kids, ages 7 to 17, were all playing Foursquare on the back porch. And they had drawn with chalk a Foursquare, which they've never done before. And they were playing Foursquare. And I was like, oh, that's nice. They're all playing together. I came home and I had been gone 2.5 hours. And apparently that entire time they were playing together. They played Foursquare, soccer. They played this game they call Elmo. They played Monopoly. And the big kids taught the little kids. And they were like together the whole time. And I was like, that's kind of cool. Like that's the benefit that I see, in the end when a lot of kids wouldn't do that. I mean, we're all in quarantine, so maybe like majority of them at this point are like, yeah, my siblings are the only kids I got to play with, but my kids seem to truly enjoy it. So that was kind of nice. No matter what age they are. I still have the younger ones. I mean, my youngest is 1st grade, but he still interrupts the older lessons and I still have to correct and teach. Okay, I'm working with your brother now. I need you to, wait and teach them that it's not their turn and when their turn is, because taking turns is hard. They can be demanding and want mom right away, and just having that conversation is important. Do you guys have any other thoughts, questions about teaching the older kids and managing the little kids? Did you hear a fresh idea? Anything that I know, Valerie, you said the containment is good. Nikki, you're nodding. What's your fresh idea?
I really liked the Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday bends. Like there's something different for every day. I hadn't thought about that. We have certain things that they can play with during school, but to kind of spread them out is a really good idea.
Novelty.
It's shiny.
Cool. I know, it's shiny and new. It must be fun.
Yeah.
Cool. Baby. Hello.
I'm still here listening. It's just been a good
Glad.
reminder to me of various ideas, and we're obviously in newborn stage here, and basically finished the school year, but need to tie up some loose ends, and need to rely on screens a lot less with my two youngest. So it's been lots of good reminders. So thank you.
Sure. It's tricky, right? Well, and I mean, we didn't get to do introductions or anything, but Blair, you have how many now?
7. He's number 7.
He's number 7. So would you say that every single baby you have to figure it out all over again?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Yep, and they're all very different as far as, how interested they are in schooling things, and interrupting children.
Poor guy. We send kisses.
Who is that? Anyway,
Some friends.
who
Oh,
is that guy?
he's adorable. So fun.
Oh
Well,
boy.
good. Any
Why do
suggestions
you
for
have
us,
a
Blair?
What's that?
Any suggestions for us, Blair?
I don't think I have any good suggestions. I definitely think my two youngest, well, besides little guy, are 3 and 6, and I think art, watercolor, and those Orbeez, although my daughter reminded me of those today, and I was like, I don't know, those are such a mess. Water table, or things like that can entertain them for pretty long periods of time. But in general, I think it's just getting used to the flow of the different ages and their different needs, and who's going to need what, and just being okay with being interrupted, being okay with not having a strict schedule, at least for our family. Lots of flexibility.
Yeah. No, that's a really good point on scheduling. I think, some families do better when things are very, structured, but a lot of families seem, especially with babies and little ones, do better with just having a rhythm and figuring out what will work and when to do what. And I can remember that with a newborn, and okay, well, I'll nurse, so this will be the time that I read this aloud, and then I've got to go do this, so you work on this independently, and then I'd come back because the baby was asleep, and I could teach, and then it was like you had to really sort through all. And I know you knew that too, Nikki. You're struggling with all your littles. Awesome, ladies. Well, I didn't mean to talk most of the time, but I know that most of you were here to just listen anyway, I think. I feel like there's so many great ideas out there that I don't have littles right now, so this doesn't apply to me, but I need to rehear all the great ideas every once in a while, because one will pop out at me and I'll go, oh, that's what I should be doing. It was helpful to me to revisit all the different possibilities, and then you kind of discern what would work or what could work and try it out. So I hope that's helpful to you too. Well, we'll keep talking in the group about it, and we're going to do more talks about just the practical stuff, try to get some of the nitty-gritty and all the details of this life in the next week or so, and get into organizing and scheduling and all those hard things. And but it's good to brainstorm and talk with you ladies, so thank you for joining me tonight.
Thank you.
Thank you.